Excellent.
We'll be talking about it.
Thanks. Lots of new modules in the past 2 releases, so that's roughly 2 weeks. First up, we have community contributor Hootie that contributed a new auxiliary module that leverages a sanitization issue in the WordPress MasterStudy plugin to create an admin account in WordPress. You can use that in conjunction with an exploitation module to most likely get a reverse shell. Community contributor Maurice Lambert has added a new denial of service module targeting vulnerable IIS servers, and I believe we'll have a demo of this later. Our very own Jake Baines added a GitLab's user accounts enumeration module. It uses the GraphQL API and does not require authentication. I believe this has been changed in newer versions of GitLab. Community contributor Tim Wright has added a new dirty pipe local privilege escalation module for kernel version starting with 5.8, and the module leverages the vulnerability to override a sudo binary in order to gain privileges as the root user. We'll have a demo of this later. Community contributor Heyder has added an unauthenticated exploit targeting Apache API 6. It leverages 2 vulnerabilities, the first which is a default API key, and the second is a IP restriction bypass. And the result is OS command execution as the service user. And we'll have a demo of this later. And our very own Jake Baines has added a module that exploits I believe it's authenticated, arbitrary file creation vulnerability in the pfSense HTTP interface, and we'll have a demo of this later. And our very own Shelby Pace has added a new module targeting the Spoolful, aka CV 2022-21999, and it is a local privilege escalation targeting the Spool service on Windows 10 or server builds 18.362 or earlier, and we will have a demo of this later. For enhancements and features, myself, Alan Foster, I have contributed a rewrite of the SMP relay module to support relay into targets SMP and STMB3. That was a joint effort with myself, Adam Galway and Spencer McIntyre, who put in a lot of the groundwork. And it also adds support for intelligent targeting for multiple hosts. So as a authentication request comes in, we'll try to relay that to a host that we haven't previously relayed to, or if it is incompatible with that particular host, we will try to move on to the next host. I've also added a new service manager command to MSF console. We'll have a demo of this later. It is behind a feature flag, but allows you to see the sort of service manager and its configuration and all of the services that are running, useful for debugging sort of edge cases, so sort of more developer oriented, but useful nonetheless. Our very own Simon Janusz has added a user configurable option for logging Meterpreter TLV packets with the setg session TLV logging true flag. And Simon has also improved the TLV packet inspection. So instead of previously showing command IDs, which is how Meterpreter sends across particular commands that it would like to run, for instance, like 8,000, they're now converted into human readable strings. So instead of 1,000, it'll now show, get stat or something similar. We'll have a demo of this later. And finally, our very own Spencer McIntyre has added additional adapter payload type, which can be used in a scenario for wanting to deliver a full Meterpreter session from a command payload. So a bunch of extra payloads there, and that should be useful for module developers to select those command payloads. Awesome. And enhancements and features, our very own Spencer McIntyre has updated the default payload selection so that command Unix reverse bash is chosen over command Unix reverse netcat by default, as it is hypothesized that that will be more useful as a default, as it'll impact more systems out of the box. As always, you can change your payload to whatever suits. Community member bcalls is actually fixed and contributed numerous enhancements for the Android support functionality, sort of throwing down all of the IDs there, but that improves the error logging, edge case handling, modernizing some of the flags that some of the internal Android tools were using, so big thanks for that. And community contributor everyone which is an individual user, has added the lcat command to Meterpreter, which allows the user to be able to cat out local files within the context of a session. And sorry, I don't believe it's added to just Meterpreter. I believe it's just these. Yeah, it is. Sorry, apologies. Awesome. Bugs fixed. I myself, Alan Foster, have contributed a bug fix for the toHandler command, which had a problem with case sensitivity. So if you specified L port in lowercase or uppercase letters, it didn't override the previously set value. So that's been fixed. Our very own Jeffrey Martin has fixed a bug in the auxiliary client SMTP emailer, which previously incorrectly handled multi-line SMTP responses, which actually stopped the module from emailing the payload successfully. So thanks for that. Community contributor smaury has fixed an edge case in cleaning up jobs where jobs were cleaned up twice, which could cause unintended errors, such as turning off HTTP servers unintentionally. And now that only gets called once. So thanks for that. And community contributor bcalls has fixed an issue when running the post-Windows managed persistence exe module on a Windows host machine. And we'll have a follow-up PR, hopefully in the next week or two, to fix similar issues in other modules. Additional bug fixes. I myself, Alan Foster, fixed an edge case when a user was specifying rhost values for a module which did not support this option. It would actually cause the module to loop multiple times over the provided rhost options when it didn't actually make sense to do so. So this impacted like auxiliary modules and such, or file format modules. Simon Janish has also updated MSF console search functionality to include the 64-bit variant of the x64 encrypted shell payloads, and in conjunction with that has also fixed a issue that was spotted, which was whenever you try to use the encrypted shells without a database configured, that would actually raise an exception. And last up, we've got Spencer McIntyre that has fixed a regression issue with the hosts command when performing tab completion when parsing, performing tab completion and also when parsing the search option. In addition to fixing a regression issue with the SMB signing detection for the scanner SMB version module, which specifically happened whenever the target had SMB1 disabled. And I believe that was fixed as part of an internal issue that was raised. As always, you can view all of the Metasploit wrap-up posts on blog.rapid7.com, and a big thank you to the community that has helped make Metasploit awesome. Next up is demos.
Yeah, next up we have Grant Wilcox, who's going to be demoing for CVE 2021-31166.
Hi there, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool. So just before we go into this, I just want to give a little bit of background because there's quite a bit of confusion regarding this bug. To be absolutely clear, this is not the 2022 bug. A lot of people think this is the CVE 2022-21907. That is actually a bug in the transfer encoding header. Now, the specifics of it are still a little bit fuzzy on that one, because there's been some misconception and a lot of people have posted proof of concepts which they thought were for that vulnerability, but are actually for this CVE 2021-3116. So just in case anyone's curious, this is not a bug for that newer vulnerability. But anyway, if you want to play the video, this one's a bug in the IIS accepting coding header. So if you look here, I'm just going to go ahead and just show the Win version, just to show this is a fairly fresh build of Windows 10, no real patches or anything like that. I'm just going to go ahead here and sign in so on. I'll just load up the module now. You'll notice that the branch was originally for the newer vulnerability. This was due to confusion on the contributors' side. They thought that they were exploiting the newer CVE, but they weren't. So again, if you do see supposed denial of service for the newer one, I would treat it with a hint of skepticism. Just there's a lot of proof of concepts flying around out there which claim to be exploiting the newer one, but are exploiting the old vulnerability. So yep, we'll just go ahead here and just set up the IP config and all the other details. Now, this denial of service, one thing to note is once it does actually trigger, if we'll call it blue screen of death on the target. Now, depending on whether IIS is configured to automatically start on reboot, will determine how long the server is actually down for. So as you can see here, we'll get a blue screen of death kernel crash. And then the server will obviously be down for as long as it takes for the server to reboot and for IIS to start back up again. So we'll do a little check here just to make sure. Try reconnect. So while the service reboots in, Metasploit will report that the host is down. Any questions? All right, that's it for me.
Thank you. Next up, we have Shelby Pace, who is going to be talking about SpoolFool.
Yeah. So yeah, basically, the SpoolFool vulnerability, essentially what it is for every printer, there is a spool directory registry key that tells the print spooler where spool jobs should go. And as long as you have the printer access administrator privilege, you can change that. And so basically what this exploit does is coerce the print spooler into creating a directory in system32 that's writable to all users. And you can go ahead and start the video. I can show what goes on. And so once you reinitialize the print spooler, that is when, if the directory doesn't exist, then it will create the directory. And so you can see there. And you can, it's not just that simple though. You have to, the directory that you set it to has to be UNC path because the checks ignore that. And then you also have to create a junction, which you can see will be highlighted next. And then, yeah, it will create the directory, write a DLL, and then load the DLL. It does take a bit to get a session, so you might want to skip to, I guess, the end of the video, or closer to the end of the video, and you should get system privileges. Yeah, it takes a few minutes. Right, finally. And yeah, you should get system privileges. Yeah. Any questions?
Awesome work.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Shelby.
No problem.
Next up, you have Dirty Pipe.
Yeah, so this exploits the Dirty Pipe vulnerability. It was written by a community contributor, Tim Wright. You can go ahead and hit the play button. Thank you. And so basically, this leverages the Dirty Pipe vulnerability to override a set UID binary. The default, I believe, is the password binary. But you can see in a second that that can be changed. Yeah, so that is the SUID binary path option there. And so basically, yeah, it will overwrite the binary with a payload, execute it, and then you'll have your privileges. And of course, it'll write it back. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Shelby. Next, we have Spencer.
Hello. All right, so this is a contributed module from the community that exploits a RCE vulnerability in the Apache APISIX API that is related to the fact that the API token that is used for authentication comes with a default value that is known and well documented. In addition to that, it also exploits a secondary CVE whereby a IP address that is contained within the allow list can be leveraged to get around access control restrictions. The module will automatically identify whether or not it is necessary to utilize that and then issue the API call to execute a Lua snippet that will result in OS command execution. If we want to go ahead and roll the video, it goes by pretty quick. This is an unauthenticated vulnerability. Unauthenticated, so you have the API token. If the API token is in the default state, of course, you'll be able to use the module out of the box. If for some reason you happen to know the API key, you can also set it explicitly up in there. At the very top, that allowed IP address is the IP address that is utilized for the bypass when that is necessary. In that plugin's configuration, 127001 is included in the allow list, so that default value right there can be used to go ahead and get around that restriction. Now, the module includes a check method that will go ahead and be able to tell whether or not the target is vulnerable, and that is included as a pre-exploit flight check. So we can go ahead and see that in this case, the command shell has been opened. Takes just a couple of seconds to go ahead and be responsive, but there you go. We see that the session was opened and the target host was compromised as the nobody user. But wait, there's more. There is also a demo for the brand new command payload type. Now, this module and this module author originally wrote it to only deliver Arch CMD exploits for the Unix platform. But we can go ahead and utilize that with the brand new CMD Unix Python interpreter reverse TCP payload. That uses the adapter, and wow, that flew right across the screen. But that goes ahead and executes an OS command that will execute the Python stager from within memory without having to drop anything to disk, make any HTTP calls or anything like that. And it worked without the module needing to be updated because it was already configured to run command payloads. So instead of just getting a command shell, you can get a full-blown interpreter session. And that's it. Any questions on that one? All right, thanks everyone.
All right. We have Simon Janusz talking about TLV logging.
Yep, so to get started with logging TLV packets, you can use a setg command, and you can either log it to the console or to a file or disable the logging completely. On the next slide, please. So as part of this addition, I've also improved how the TLV types are handled. So previously they had to be manually hard-coded. So if a new extension, for example, was added, the TLV types would show up as unknown. So now they're actually done programmatically. So if a new extension is added, the types should be automatically discovered and shown to the user. On next slide, please. And yeah, as part of further improvements, we can actually see the command name as well as the command value now. So that's, again, helping with debugging when loading libraries on a interpreter session. Any questions? Thanks.
Thank you so much, Simon. Next up, we have Alan talking about service manager commands.
Yep. So this functionality is currently behind a feature flag just because it's mostly aimed towards developers, and yeah, just easier to opt into it. So there's a features manager concept in MSF console. You can use feature set wrap tables true or false to enable or disable features. You can see there's prior features enabled and disabled on my screen. So yeah, you'll need to first run that command, and then on the next slide, you'll see that the command that's exposed to the user is _service manager. The reason why it's underscore is maybe twofold. One is it's air quotes private, i.e. may change in the future, and underscore is normally the convention that you use to denote such things like programming languages such as Python, etc., etc. But in this particular case, it's to stop getting in the way of tab completion of the existing services command. But to give context on what the service manager is, it's one of the internal mechanisms that Metasploit uses to keep track of shared resources. So for instance, HTTP servers, each module may want to host different files on different file paths. And to do so, it has a concept of a service manager that's shared across multiple modules. And you register intent to register to start a service on a particular port. And if it's already exposed and running, it'll give you back a reference, a counted reference to the instance of the HTTP server. And previously, it wasn't possible to debug whenever things had gone wrong or see any insights into what the service manager is doing. But pretty much what the command does is allow you to view all of those running services and the references. So that's the numbers on the right-hand side where it says 722. That's keeping count of how many modules or references there are to a particular HTTP server or to a particular relay server or to whatever service is there. This doesn't currently offer the ability to kill any of those services. That's generally done via the jobs command, which should hopefully kill the services. But again, this is more developer orientated, but could be exposed to users if you wanted to allow them to debug whenever something's gone wrong or having insights into, oh, what services am I running? But yep, that's all for me. Any questions? Awesome, thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Okay, next up we have Jake Baines talking about CVE 2021-41282.
Hi, everyone. Just as a little background, this was disclosed in late February and affects pfSense 2.52 and below. And it's an arbitrary file write through the diagnostics routing tables page. So it does require authentication, but you don't necessarily have to be the admin user. The vulnerability comes about due to arbitrary argument injection. The arguments are passed to sed that the attacker can control. So like I said, arbitrary file write. Yeah, so we can play the video. What I like about this module is that it drops a web shell. And there's also an option to actually leave the web shell behind in case you want to come back. You can persist through upgrades and such. So like I said, it does require authentication, but pfSense has really specific controls, like down to the page of what users can view. So it's not unheard of for admin users to have access to this page. You'll see that this very quickly runs. It will grab the web shell content and it will get you a nice little reverse shell. And you will see that we're running as root, which is quite excellent on a firewall. So depending on which side you're coming from, this could be a very nice network pivot. But either way, everyone loves root execution on a firewall. That's it.